Being launched. It is now.
9:30, I'll call the meeting to order. Happy to be back in council chambers, and just for council to know, and any residents that happen to be watching, not a priority, obviously, with what's happened in OCAB for us to be in this room to do this meeting. We did it virtually 2 weeks ago, and we could do it again. But in the context of what we want IT to be working on, it's not organizing virtual meetings for us, and it's not organizing another in-person location for us. So facility staff did a whole lot of work in addition to everything else they're doing in this building and everything else they normally do to get the rooftop unit working in here so that we could have this meeting in here and keep focused on getting all the other staff back in place to deal with the public and the services they need from us. So my thanks to staff in general in this time, but in particular to Public Works and Facility staff, IT for getting this all going, and to Lindsay in the clerk's office for moving us to virtual and then back to in-person and making it all happen so that we can get here and do the business of the residents of Oxford County. So with that, let's get to that business. First item of business is approval of the agenda. Deputy Warden Petrie.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Tate, resolved that the agenda be approved.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Having adopted the agenda, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Adoption of the council minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Warden Petrie, resolved that the council minutes of June 25th, 2025 be adopted.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And a resolution to go into a public meeting. Councillor Gilvazy.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Schaefer, resolve that council rise and go into a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, and that the warden chair the public meeting.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And I will turn it over to Director Michaels.
Thank you, Warden. The application before council today is an official plan amendment application that is to include site-specific policies to allow for servicing extension to the hamlet of Sebastopol in Perth County. It would allow for the connection of 3 proposed lots in that hamlet, and the water services that they're proposing to connect to already run along the front of the subject property. Sebastopol is a hamlet located just north of Tavistock and has historically been serviced by county services. It's a fairly unique legacy situation from prior to 1960, and that servicing has been provided through agreement renewed over the years. The property itself already has 1 connection to the municipal water services from Tavistock, and 3 more are proposed to provide services to these proposed lots. Consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications were submitted to Perth County and the Township of Perth East, and both of those were conditionally approved, subject to receiving OPA approval from the County of Oxford for the connection of water services. Our official plan policies generally do prohibit the extension of services outside of service settlement boundaries, and particularly beyond the county boundary. So this is a fairly unique situation here, and like I said, this is a legacy situation in this case. So it does provide an exception in the OP policies for extensions to the hamlet of Sebastopol in particular, and there is also recognition that some minor infilling for residential purposes could occur within that hamlet. But the review of any connection proposal is still subject to an OPA and various review criteria. In this case, it is the opinion of planning staff that the proposal satisfies those applicable OP review criteria. As the lands are contained within a designated settlement, in this case the hamlet of Sebastopol. It is only for connection to existing water services. There's no extension of infrastructure required, and no connection to wastewater services, which is usually a bigger concern. It will facilitate limited residential infilling within a residential settlement. It's primarily a residential settlement. Some commercial uses do exist, which is supported by the PPS and even our own official plan policies. This one just happens to be located in Perth County. There's still more than sufficient capacity in the water system for Tavistock to support its own growth for the 30-year period and beyond. And in fact, it's the wastewater services that are probably the limiting factor there versus the water services. And there's already an existing agreement in place for services to be provided to that area, so that sets out sort of the terms of connections and the appropriate financial costs and contributions. And this connection will contribute towards the cost of operating the existing water services and system in this case. And further, Township Council did recommend support of the OPA at their council meeting. So in summary, planning staff are recommending that in this particular case, this application can be considered for approval, and we're recommending approval of the attached official plan amendment. So happy to answer any questions about the report.
Thank you. Questions from council for the planner on the report? Not seeing any. Is the applicant here and do they wish to speak to their application? Are there any members of the public, either here in person or online, who wish to speak to the application? Thank you. Resolution to adjourn the public meeting. Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, Warden, through you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin. Resolve the council adjourn the public meeting and reconvene as Oxford County Council with the warden and the chair.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Consideration of report CP 2025-195. Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, Warden, through you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Accione. Resolve the recommendations contained in report CP 2025-195 titled Application for Official Plan Amendment OP 25-07-2 2274581 Ontario Inc. be adopted.
Councillor Schaefer is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Warden. This is a unique situation. It goes back over 60 years. This is and it's two settlement areas. They're basically joined together. You would never know which one you're in, quite frankly. I like to compare it to Kitchener-Waterloo on a very, very small basis. But I'll support this because it is infill. It's creating additional density without taking any more farmland. Perth has been a very good neighbor. They provided us a bit of land in 2006 to connect two roads to facilitate a new subdivision. So we do get an increased fee, I believe, for this, for the water services. We have lots of water. We have 3 wells, soon to be 4. So based on all that, I fully support this. I know it's unique, but I think it just makes sense. Thank you.
Councillor Accione is the seconder. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Normally, I'm not in favor of any kind of cross-border services. I'm the first one to admit, but here is a scenario where I did not even realize it was a whole different hamlet. I just assumed it was all part of Tavistock, to be honest. So I was quite surprised when reading this and recognizing that Tavistock has enough of what they need already, and this is a great way to infill. Intensification is key word in all areas. I certainly support this. And working along with Perth, I think is fantastic to work with your neighbors.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. No delegations, presentations, or consideration thereof. Consideration of correspondence. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Schaefer, resolved that correspondence items 7.1 to 7.3 on the open meeting agenda of July 9th, 2025 be received.
Is there any discussion? Deputy Warden Petrie.
Thank you, Warren. Through you, item number 7.2, Blandford Blenheim, their letter of request there. Just a question to staff. I believe that there is because of construction, there's going to be an assessment done next year. Is that correct? And then there hasn't been anything decided, so this will be taken into consideration.
Through the warden to council. So that is correct. It is part of our 10-year capital plan currently to do an assessment in that area in 2026 because that roadway is currently closed.
Okay. I guess that would be my only request is that maybe that information's, they maybe have it already, but to the Blandford Blenheim Council, just to let them know that that's the timeline and that they can expect that to happen. So.
Any other discussion? Councillor Gilvazy.
Thank you. Through you, Warden. I'm not sure who to ask this to. It's regarding 7.3 and the Vision Zero policy regarding road safety. I'm not sure what this entails, but the county or municipalities don't, in the end of the day, have the ability to enforce, traffic violations. This is not like a police issue. It's the letter, 7.3, or is that, yeah.
It's 7.3. I guess the first thing I'll take a crack at is this council passed a resolution very similar to this one. I can't remember when, spring, May, I can't remember, April or May, I can't remember. This council passed a resolution very similar to this. But I don't know if Director Abercrombie wants to take a crack at answering that.
Yeah, through the warden to council. So as the warden mentioned, county council did pass a resolution. Staff are currently in the process of preparing a draft report to council on what it would entail for us to adopt a Vision Zero or look at extending the rural road safety audit to all of our intersection reviews and things like that. So that report is expected to come back in Q3 to council.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And reports from departments we dealt with already. Public Works, 8.2.1, PW 2025-40, contract award, Wanham Street South Rail Crossing, water main replacement, Town of Ingersoll. Director Abercrombie, is there anything you want to highlight for council?
There's nothing further to add at the moment, but we are able to answer questions.
Questions from council? Deputy Warden Petrie.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, moved by myself, second by Councilor Accioni, resolved the recommendation contained in report PW 2025-40 titled Contract Award Wanham Street South Rail Crossing, Water Main Replacement, Town of Ingersoll be adopted.
Deputy Warden, as the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, certainly this is this certainly needs to be done, and I'm glad it's moving forward. I have 2 points. One is that even though this doesn't look like on the map a major arterial road, it certainly is, because you have to go, as you can see by the detour, there's not a lot of great ways to get around besides that. So this is a heavily trafficked area. I would just request that as much communication as possible go out, as it is heavily used. And then the second point is, I guess it goes to my notice of motion that was put forward. This is here today because it's $47,144 over the limit of $1 million. So this would be an example of something that has gone through the tendering process, has gone within budget, and it's because for council because of the dollar amount rather than that. So I don't know if it's held up anything, but you know, there is that thing of writing the report and then bringing it to council before the contract's awarded. And really, it meets all the criteria otherwise than that. So that's my 2 points on that. But certainly, this is something that I know everybody needs to be done. But it is a busy part of town just because of the topography and the layout of roads. So I'll leave it there. But it's certainly supportive of it.
Councilor Accioni is the seconder.
I'm okay, Warden, thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.2.2 PW 2025-41, proposed amendments to the Blue Box Regulation and the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act 2016. Director Abercrombie, is there anything you'd like to highlight for council there?
Thank you, Warden Ryan. So the report before you today is the proposed amendments that the province released in early June regarding the Blue Box Regulation and the Resource Recovery Circular Economy Act. And so staff have reviewed these two amendments and what the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks has proposed. And what it will propose is that we will see a delay in a reduced material recovery targets. It's unfortunately removing the planned program expansion to public spaces and certain residential facilities, and it's going to allow up to 15% of non-recyclable material to be counted toward diversion targets through energy recovery, such as incineration. Staff are concerned that these changes will weaken the landfill diversion rates across the province and reduce incineration for the producers in the transition for more recyclable packaging options. Particularly, the delay in the targets from 2026 to 2031 is a significant setback in the terms of promoting the circular economy and the responsible resource management. On the other hand, with the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act proposal, they would require those producers to collect from the small businesses, which Oxford County has approved under our non-eligible source program. So we see this as a positive change. And we feel like this would better allow for the co-collection, which is something obviously would be beneficial to all of our residents. This would be at the municipality's cost, though. So I also have Mr. Frank Gross here to help answer questions for the council on this report.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, I just heard my colleague whisper something that was right on my mind, your very last sentence. This will be at the cost of the municipality. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, what you anticipate that could be? Because, again, this seems to be a provincial decision that could have an impact to our decision-making for our taxpayers.
Yeah, so I'll start, and then if Frank wants to add anything else. So unfortunately, we don't 100% know because this is only a proposal to the change. So we don't know what that is. We would hope it would be in line with what MTerra has priced our non-eligible source contract for us. We do have that as a price, but I'm not sure on the amount of that exact cost. Do you know that off the top of your head? So sorry, Frank said the next cost is around $200,000 a year for those what's currently a non-eligible source for the small businesses.
So just as a follow-up to that, I think 200,000 would be about 0.2% of levy. Is that right? Just under 0.2%? 2.5? Sorry, 2.5. Just over. Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, Warden, through you. So just to be clear, the non-eligible sources can be co-collected then with the eligible sources? Is that right under this proposal? Because currently they're not going to be allowed the way it was, right?
Through the Warden to Council, that is correct. If they adopt their proposal, that would now be allowed.
Any other questions? Deputy Warden.
Through you, Warden, so we will receive anything that changes to our current setup once if this is successful, we'll receive an update on that as well, right?
Through the Warden to Council, yes. Any updates once they become actually passed in legislation, staff will report back on the implications to our current contracts.
Councillor Gilvazy.
Thank you, through your Warden. I was reading where staff didn't support the diversion of the 15% to incineration. It had indicated that this would allow producers not to look for sources that are, I guess, recyclable. I'm curious though, I guess I struggle with this a little bit, and I'm curious to that rationale, because maybe there are certain products or things that have to be packaged that just can't be in recyclable material, and if they were diverted to incineration to energy, that actually produces zero waste.
Through the Warden. Yeah, I believe to a certain degree, but there's still environmental impacts associated with incineration as far as emissions, as well as the residual material then that tends to be or potentially could be hazardous material then that needs to be disposed of properly.
Through you, Warden. There are places that are using it, and there's much cleaner technology than say there was 20 years ago. So I guess without taking a deep dive into this though, on the surface, if you truly want to achieve the zero waste, how do you do it? If there are those materials that just cannot be recycled, wouldn't it be better going to an incinerator versus going to a landfill?
Through the Warden, some may argue it's a better alternative than landfilling, but I think the intent of the producer responsibility framework is to incentivize producers to consider using recyclable materials in their packaging and promote the circular economy. So by allowing that material just to go to incineration, it's really just an alternative to landfilling that material and defeats the intent of producer responsibility framework.
Anyone else? Councillor Mayberry.
I guess I agree with the comments from staff here that I'm concerned about extending the recovery targets for another 5 years, which basically says you can do whatever you want for the next 5 years, and then maybe then we'll consider actually doing something. By not extending them, you actually create a situation where the producers have to actually get to work which would be an unfortunate situation, I'm sure, for them. But they actually have to come up with solutions to problems that they actually created. And I'm not sure that that isn't actually the essence of producer responsibility. I'm concerned about the 15% being used for incineration, because really what it does is it says, okay, that 15% we could just get rid of by burning. And while the technology has changed, and I would agree with that, the chemistry hasn't. Chemistry is the same today as it was 1,000 years ago, and whatever products we create as we break them down, the chemical reactions will be the same today, tomorrow, and forever. Thank you.
Anyone else? This is, disappointing, and I wish I could say I was surprised by it, but I'm not, because this other than the principle of producer responsibility, every announcement from the government on this has been negative since the beginning, right? Other than the principle, it's all been bad, and every step of the way, every time there's a change, it's been further bad, whether it's bad from the point of view of, strictly speaking, putting more cost onto municipal taxpayers as opposed to the province or the producers, or the environmental impacts eroding away slowly but surely the merits of producer responsibility. From a technical standpoint, there's no, to Councillor Mabry's point, from the last time I worked in engineering, which is like frighteningly a long time ago now, but there's no material that you can't reduce the amount that you use, reuse it, or recycle it. It's varying degrees of cost and difficulty to do it, but there's none that can't be done. And this just erodes the incentive for the producers who profit off creating these materials from coming up with those ways to reduce and reuse it, and puts the burden onto, potentially, my concern is, puts the burden onto municipal taxpayers, because everything that isn't diverted is going to end up going further and further into our municipal property tax funded landfill and filling it up faster, instead of the producers paying it. So on the face of it, it's still producer responsibility, but the reality is every time that producer responsibility, air quotes, part is eroded, it just shifts that burden onto a municipal property taxpayer to put that stuff that the producer is no longer responsible for into a landfill. So very disappointing again to me, but this council's been clear from the beginning that we thought the principle was good, but the initiatives have been, the policy specifics have been weak since they were first introduced and ever since. So disappointed. Anyone else? Councillor Gilvazy.
Thank you. I just have one comment. The producer, in my eyes, the producer's not paying. Regardless, in the end of the day, it's the consumer that's paying. So it's either the consumer that's paying, the taxpayer that's paying, because those costs are going to be passed forward. I think that we can't sit here and say the producer's going to pay, because they're never going to pay. And, even for, looking at other materials, I would assume, like all those costs, if they have to use more expensive packaging material, the product is just going to become more expensive. So in the end of the day, it's the people that pay it, no matter what system it is.
So we've moved into debate now, so I'm going to ask for a motion. Councillor Accioni.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Palmer, resolved that the recommendation contained in Report PW 2025-41, titled Proposed Amendments to the Blue Box Regulation and the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act 2016 be adopted.
Is there any discussion? Deputy Warden. Councillor Accioni.
Thank you for that. I've been holding off because I got more comments than questions. I certainly agree with what's really been said here by most of council and the warden themselves. I made some notes here talking about the burden that is going to be put on to the taxpayer as well as the consumers, exactly like Councillor Gilvazy says. At the end of the day, those making the profits aren't going to be paying for this, and it's just disastrous for our landfill. Pushing things 5 years, I think, is the absolute worst thing they could have done at this point. They've had time. Why they're not ready? They've been forcing us to be ready and given us no choices, but to give it to the person actually making profits, the delays, I think, is just absolutely wrong. The 5-year delay is just going to, again, put more profits and leave us where? The taxpayer burdens because of the, I do fully support the co-collection. I think we should be supporting those other businesses and everybody for those non-eligible sources, but I still haven't seen a list of what is considered non-eligible sources as well. So when all this gets together, I'd really I'm fearful for this. I really, truly am, and this is not good for anybody involved at all, except for the companies. Thank you.
And as I should have before going to the mover, the seconder, Councillor Palmer, do you have it? Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Warden, through you. Appreciate the comments on this because it's, you know, we fought a huge landfill here, and the government's talking about, you know, there's this propaganda that's coming out that we're losing landfill capacity. AMO's bought into it. With it's not based off anything scientific, it's just based off industry industry speak, which they've been using for 25 years. You know, we saw Dresden, who has gone outside with Bill 5 coming in, making special economic zones where they exempt these projects. And so it's a scary thing to see happen. So on one hand, we have a crisis, but on the other hand, we have delays. Things that would help landfill capacity are being delayed at the request of industry. When municipalities stood up and said, this doesn't make any sense, we need to implement something better, silence on the policy. So we went through and we did all this work, well, we didn't, staff did all this work to try to figure it out, to how this is gonna work, and oh, wait, bam, it's changed again, creating more confusion. Bad policy at the beginning is still bad policy no matter how you tweak it. I would ask the provincial government, what is your policy and what is your direction on waste reduction? Are you serious about it, or are you just looking for a solution that's easy for them to implement and have someone else deal with? The ratepayers of Oxford County are going to have to deal with this. They're going to receive less service, and unfortunately, it's going to come back to the county and each one of our municipalities because the people of Oxford County, whether they should or not, most of them just see, hey, municipalities pick up my waste, whether it's a contractor or anybody else, or a private firm or whatever that is. It's going to come back to us and create headaches for our staff. And it's every change they make, it makes, because we have to make another decision at this level, it makes us look less prepared, which is not fair. And certainly blame falls on the provincial government. And I wish they would pay attention to municipalities as much as they paid attention to the private industry here. And so we can move together towards a stronger long-term solution rather than just putting things off.
Any other discussion? Councillor Gilvaise.
Thank you, Through Warden. Overall, I concur with the report, and I think that it has some good things in it. Again, disappointed to see the recovery target move to 2031. The only thing that I don't agree with, though, is I think my questioning around the incineration, because I actually think we should be incinerating more garbage and not sending it to our landfill. So I would say that's the only part that I'm struggling in. And then again, I'll just reiterate, in the end of the day, regardless who's collecting it, the producer's paying. It's either the taxpayer or the consumer. It's the people that are paying.
Councillor Martin, then Councillor Mayberry.
Thank you, Warden Ryan. I've been trying to put together some thoughts here. In the report, so the recommendation is for us to adopt the report. And in the report, it suggests under communications that that this report will be circulated to the area municipalities for information, or as information. And so it's not a question for staff, but a question for my council colleagues. Is this enough? Is this enough action on our part to circulate it to our member municipalities, and they'll receive it for information, and there is no further action? Is this an opportunity for us to speak up and reply to the province with our concerns? Because if the intention is for us to bear this 0.25% levy increase, $200,000, or whatever that number might be, what is the provincial plan to address that? Is it intended to be a download, or is there some other mechanism out there? I think that that we need to take action on these kinds of reports, because otherwise we're just letting the province do this to us.
Councillor Mayberry.
I would just quick comment on Councillor Gilvaise's comment about incineration. I would just remind us that, in fact, incineration costs money too. So the taxpayers are going to pay for that as well. The other part about it, and I agree, the taxpayers are going to pay as consumers. One way or another, they're going to pay the full bill. Industry is not going to pick up this tab. I'm sure of that. On the other hand, every one of us as consumers or as taxpayers actually make choices every day as to what we buy or what we don't buy. And at some point, the responsibility should be shared between the producers who produce something, but there's also responsibility on the consumer who should say, you know what, I'm not buying that because I don't like the packaging or because the packaging is not recyclable and or reusable or whatever. And so I would actually agree with Councillor Martin, although I come at it from a different direction. I wonder, how do we educate people to realize that creating garbage is a long-term problem and it's ours? We're the ones that are addicted to waste, to being able to dispose of waste in the simplest possible method. Thank you.
Anyone else? In addition, I would add, not only is it individuals' choices about what they buy and whether it's reusable or recyclable or not, but to Councillor Accione's comments earlier, when we subsidize a producer's choice to use materials that are not being reused or recycled, we're actually, by property taxes, subsidizing the profits of a private corporation to say, we'll look after your packaging for you by taxing people. Whether they buy that product or not, we will tax people to dispose of that company's packaging, which they chose for profit reasons, which they're perfectly entitled to choose whatever they want for their packaging as long as they meet all government regulations. But I don't think that it's okay that we would be expected to tax people to subsidize their business choices. I think if they're free to make those choices, they should be entirely free to pay the bill for those choices and not have it through the back door of provincial legislation and producer responsibility and what gets put in the blue box and what gets put in a garbage bag and what gets collected by who, and by that time nobody knows what's going on, and oh, by the way, you were actually taxed for that producer's choice of packaging, I think is not okay. It's the definition of not transparent. So yeah, again, I just reiterate that I'm not supportive of this, the details of how this change is being rolled out. Anyone else? Deputy Warden.
Sorry, you bring up a good point there, and sorry, through you, Warden, is that, you know, this is a two-prong approach, and really all the regulations, the municipalities have the responsibility to collect garbage, but, you know, the producer responsibility. One thing that's being lost here is, like you said, is that they're allowed to use any packaging which is in the regulations. And what we haven't seen from our provincial government or federal government is restrictions on what they do. A glass bottle may be more expensive, but if everybody has to use it, now it becomes equal. And a glass can be recycled infinitely. Cans can be recycled infinitely, aluminum. But, you know, if the cost goes up, if a bottle is more for one, plastic becomes a cheaper option. And unfortunately, that's what people are going to go to, which is the least recyclable of them and the less sustainable. We've seen resistance or downright, you know, not wanting to at all from the province to implement a return policy like there is on beer cans and stuff like this. And we know from European countries that have, they get a much higher rate of return on their stuff. So I guess my point is, not only if we want to see results from the provincial government, they need to step up at those higher levels of government and regulate the type of materials that can be used so it's a fair playing field for all people. And then that would drastically have an effect on reducing the amount of waste that can't be recycled that we all have to pay for as taxpayers. So maybe that's something that, you know, in a broader advocacy point of view, just put in the back burner for that.
Anyone else? Councillor Gilvese.
Thank you. Very brief. A couple things. Number one, I don't think Canada overall is leading the way in recycling and waste management, and I think that there's other countries that, you know, maybe we could be looking, encouraging the provincial government to look at some countries like potentially in Europe that do a really good job of recycling. There's like places in Europe, they don't use plastic, they're using glass. We used to use glass in this country, but we don't use it anymore. And the second thing is the government collects an environmental fee when they sell televisions or computers. Why aren't we asking for a piece of that pie? Because ultimately the cost is being borne here, right? But they're reaping the benefit of the tax.
Anyone else? To that point, I don't know the current status of this legislation, but I know, again, digging back deep, when I worked in automotive, there was legislation coming into place in Germany that would require car companies to be 100% responsible for your car. So when you bought your BMW, when you were done with your BMW or whatever subsequent owner was done with it, you could take it back to BMW, hand them the keys, and they had to deal with the whole car, every piece of material in it. And that drove those car companies to say, okay, we need to start making different choices about what materials we put into this thing, because I'm going to get it back in a decade, 15 years, 20 years, and deal with it. And so they have. They've made radically different choices about what materials they use because they are truly responsible for that vehicle. Again, I'm not sure what the status of that legislation is today, but I definitely remember a time not that long ago, actually, where in PEI even, there were, aluminum cans were illegal in PEI, and it was only due to industry pressure that they dropped the glass requirement for it to be glass bottles. So I think there's a lot more to be done. Frankly, this reminds me, especially what the Deputy Warden said, it reminds me a little bit about the resolution that this council passed with respect to road safety, where all this stuff gets, the absence of action from the federal and provincial government on road safety about licensing and vehicle regulations gets pushed down onto this council to say, yeah, solve all those problems by putting in rumble strips or a bigger stop sign. Like, it's literally like the last step in the puzzle we're supposed to do. It's not that the car isn't right or the licensing isn't adequate, and it's the same thing with this. We're going to make no effort to determine what materials are appropriate or aren't appropriate, but somehow the municipality that just sends a truck around to pick up the bag or the bin is supposed to make it all okay. So it really is an absence of, again, an absence of action, I would say, on the part of the federal and provincial governments, and we're expected to literally carry the bag at the end of the day on it. So maybe it's something for council to think about, as Councillor Martin said, about, do we want to think about a different approach to this? I'm certainly hearing a lot of concerns here from council, and at a future date, do we want to look at, some kind of different approach? Councillor Martin.
I'm just wondering, for my peers, is there an appetite to take a 2-minute break to come up with an amendment to this that puts some action to the motion?
I'm going to just say, let's just take 5, and I'll come back, and if somebody has a motion, they do, and if they don't, then they don't. So we'll just take 5. All right, 10:13, we're back from break, and there is a motion on the floor moved by Accioni, seconded by Palmer, resolved that the recommendation contained in report PW 2025-41 titled Proposed Amendments to the Blue Box Regulation and the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act 2016 be adopted. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Martin.
Yes, I'd like to, through you, make an amendment to that motion, an addition to it. So the amendment moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gilvesi, that Council direct staff to formulate a comprehensive response to the provincial government addressing financial and environmental concerns regarding the proposed changes, and that this report be circulated to area municipalities for input.
Councillor Martin is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, the original report suggested that this be circulated to the area municipalities for information, and so we wanted to change that to input because we would like their feedback that can also be aggregated into the response to the province. But I think we all, during discussion, have expressed financial and environmental concerns around this, and I think that we would like to have a report that suggests what those, the sum of those are, and how we can communicate this back to the province.
Councillor Gilvesi is the seconder.
No, I think Councillor Martin has captured it quite well. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Deputy Warden.
Yep, I think that I heard from staff that my only concern is that we may not have, it depends on when that report's coming back, because I know that staff are going to bring back further reports when they know more information on the impacts of the operations, because again, this is proposal versus actual legislation. I guess my question to staff is that, is this a workable amendment that you can produce, I guess, is there any issues that way from a workability standpoint?
You want to take that?
Through you, Warden, and maybe just to provide some clarity from the report, there were 2 ERO response postings that were available for response. One of those postings has closed with comments provided based on what you saw in the report with regards to the issues that staff had identified. The other posting does have a later deadline. However, again, it would not be before the next council meeting. So responses to that ERO posting would have to happen before coming back to council with any further report. On the specifics of the amendment to the motion, it directs staff to formulate a comprehensive response, which I believe we have and can do still with in regards to the ERO posting, addressing the financial and environmental concerns. It then references, and this report be circulated to area municipalities for input. So my reading of that is not that there's another report being created, it's that staff are being directed to provide a response to the government posting. So if council's looking for something different from that, that's how it would be interpreted.
Councillor Martin.
So for clarity, I could have put in, instead of this report, PW 2025-41. So it's the existing report. I'm trying to speak to the amendment, but the full report that is in front of us today be circulated, but for input, because the recommendation is for information. So creating an action around that. The other feedback I would have to your comment, CEO Adley, would be that the deadline for input has partially passed and another one looming, but I think that this amendment and our response today feeds a greater advocacy role through strategic initiatives that we want the province to understand that the trickle-down effect of this report to us, and we want to feed that information and our concerns back up to the province. So beyond the feedback that the province is looking for, this is a much longer game that I'm looking at in action and in response.
Is that the clarity you were looking for?
That does provide clarity.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Councillor Accioni.
Thank you. I was actually going right down the same way that Councillor Martin was going. That's the way I interpret it, saying that we do have to put forward. I really like what the directors put together and the reports, but would love to see it get out to area municipalities, have some input from them, their thoughts as area municipalities as well, and all brought together, recognizing there's more changes coming and we don't have all the information. So thank you for that.
Anyone else on the amendment? Councillor Mayberry.
My understanding of the amendment was exactly as Councillor Martin just said, that this was this plus the advocacy step and the outreach to municipalities to get some kind of formal input. So I completely concur with the interpretation, or at least that's my interpretation, and I completely concur with the amendment.
Any other discussion on the amendment? The one thing that I would say is, I support the amendment, no problem at all, and the request for input from area municipalities. The one thing that I have a slight thing about is requesting input from the area municipalities, because I don't want county council to treat the area municipalities like children where they have to be asked for their input. Their input is, of course, always welcome here, whether asked for or not. You know, an area municipality can always just take something from the county that's there sent as information and say, actually, we have input, and give it to us. So I'm sometimes weary of we ask for their input versus we don't ask for their input. Either way, the input is welcome, and so I just don't want to, I'm always wary of that kind of, because I know from talking to some area councillors that there's sometimes a perspective of a perceived relationship that I would not like to encourage. But aside from that slight concern, fully supportive of the amendment on the floor. Any other discussion on the amendment? Councillor Mayberry.
So I would just counter with, if you don't ask for input, are you looking like you're acting without regard to the input or potential input? So I think anytime you ask for input, my input might be, you know, a blank stare, or it might actually be something constructive. So I think it's always a good idea, or almost always a good idea, that if you actually want input, that you ask for it. And in my mind, that's what this does. Thank you.
Well, and as I said, I support the amendment, but I have sat in this chamber before where council members have said that their area municipality was not asked, and I always sat there in frustration thinking, well, if you knew, you could have told. You don't have to wait to be asked. This council certainly doesn't wait for the province to ask us for input. If we have input for them, we give it, whether asked for or not, and I would encourage area municipalities to do the same. Anyway, any other discussion on the amendment before I call the question? And I will ask the clerk to read the amendment again, since you don't have it in front of you in writing. Can I get you to read the amendment, and then I'll call the question on the amendment.
And that council directs staff to formulate a comprehensive response to the provincial government addressing financial and environmental concerns regarding the proposed changes, and that this report be circulated to area municipalities for input.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now to the amended motion that is on the floor. And I'm going to, I guess before I read it all again and call the question, I'm going to ask if there's any further discussion on the amended motion. I will then read have the amended motion read before I call the question. Any further discussion? So the amended motion is moved by Councillor Accione, seconded by Councillor Palmer, resolved that recommendations contained in report PW 2025-41 titled Proposed Amendments to the Blue Box Regulation and the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act 2016 be adopted.
And that council directs staff to formulate a comprehensive response to the provincial government addressing financial and environmental concerns regarding the proposed changes, and that this report be circulated to area municipalities for input.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.2.3, PW 2025-42, Oxford Road 28 and Oxford Road 6 intersection review. Director Abercrombie, is there anything you'd like to highlight for council?
Yes, thank you, Warden Ryan. So in the January, at the January 22nd meeting of council, council directed staff to complete a road safety audit at the intersection of Oxford Road 28 and Oxford Road 6. Staff have now completed that report in conjunction with a consultant, and the audit confirms that the intersection remains a safety risk due to increased traffic volumes, high operating speeds, and ongoing collision occurrences. While some minor improvements to visibility and signage were proposed, the audit ultimately recommends implementing an all-way stop as the most effective way to reduce both the risk and the severity of the collisions at this location. Since then, staff have also completed installing a double solid yellow line on Oxford Road Road 6 approaches as part of the 2025 line painting program. The operational review that was originally scheduled to be completed this month will now not be carried out because the audit findings and recommendations are clear and not be impacted by the additional data collection. This report recommends the always stop. It will be installed this fall if adopted by council today and funded through the corporate general reserve. As well, we will make sure we have a comprehensive public communication plan so that all drivers in the area are aware of this change. And happy to answer any questions council might have.
Thank you. Questions from council on the report? Not seeing any. Councillor Mayberry.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Palmer. Resolved the recommendations contained in report PW 2025-42 titled Oxford Road 28 and Oxford Road 6 intersection review be adopted.
Councillor Mayberry, as the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
No, I'm very supportive of it. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer is the seconder. Any other discussion? Just want to say very supportive of this change, and I guess the first thing I would say is I did get a message from Nathan Bean, who, if you remember me, the delegation at that time to council. We were texting back and forth about it. He said, quote, hoping to express the community's appreciation for the work staff has undertaken and to also tell council that the community is supportive of this report, end quote. So happy that I'm sure we all remember how well prepared and professional and constructive that delegation was here, arguably the best that I ever heard. And I would add that he's now a summer student at the Township of Zora for the summer while he's on his summer break from his political science program at University of Ottawa. But I think, to me, the best part of this report is that the intersection will be safer. The next best part is that I think that it is a result of a different perspective that staff has taken on it. So it's not simply as a result of an incident and an item of advocacy and an individual decision of council, and that hopefully if council continues down the path of taking a different lens like Vision Zero and in the Ontario Good Roads Rural Road Safety Program, that residents will continue to get similar intersection improvements for safety just as a result of policy and not as a result of specific incidents or specific advocacy or individual decisions, because I think that's always council's job, is to put policy in place that residents get the best service they can get regardless of the decision of the day. So very happy to see this report come forward. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.2.4 excuse me, PW 2025-43, temporary all-way stop at Oxford Road 36 and Brant Oxford Road and Keg Lane. Director Abercrombie, is there anything you'd like to highlight for council?
Thank you, Warden Ryan. So council is before you today ahead of a temporary all-way stop at the intersection of Oxford Road 36, which is the Brant Oxford Road, and Keg Line. This is a boundary road that is jointly owned by both Oxford and Brant counties. Brant County recently completed a traffic operational analysis because of their planned work in the downtown of Paris, and this analysis was identified as potential areas that we needed to look at due to the traffic volumes on the detour route. This is looking at a short-term fix to install a temporary all-way stop, and then their long-term is to install temporary traffic signals later this fall. This was presented to Brant County Council last night at their county council, and their council did pass the temporary all-way stop into their bylaws. So assuming Oxford County Council, they are hoping that it will be installed approximately middle of next week. They have all their locates and everything like that. Both the temporary all-way stop and the temporary signals will be at Brant County's cost and have no cost to Oxford County taxpayers. And happy to answer any questions council might have.
Thank you. Questions from council on the report? Not seeing any. Councillor Palmer.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded Councillor Mayberry. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report PW 2025-43 titled Temporary Always Stop at Oxford Road 36/Brant Oxford Road and Keg Lane be adopted.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any discussion on unfinished business? Not seeing any. No motions or notice of motions. Any inquiries of staff? Not seeing any. Motion to go into closed. Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Galvezi. the council rise and go into closed session to consider Report HS 2025-08 and Report CAO 2025-03 regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the county or local board and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including county or local board employees.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Is carried. And I'll just give a minute to get people back in the room. All right, so coming back from closed then, and consideration of matters arising from closed session, 14.1 HSCS 2025-08, Councillor Gilvazy.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mayberry, resolved that the recommendations contained in Report HS CS 2025-08 be adopted.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 14.2 CAO CS 2025-03, Councillor Mayberry.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, resolved that recommendations contained in report CAO closed session 2025-03 be adopted.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And bylaws, Councillor Accione.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gilvezzi. Resolved that the following bylaws be read a first and second time, 6740-2025 to 6746-2025 inclusive.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Councillor Accione.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, moved by myself, second by Councillor Gilvezzi. Resolved that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading, 6740-2025 to 6746-2025 inclusive.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Deputy Warden Petrie.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, moved by Councillor Peterson, Deputy Warden Petrie, seconded by Councillor Tate. Resolved that the council meeting of July 9th, 2025 be adjourned until the next meeting scheduled for August 13th, 2025.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We are adjourned.